Welcome to Eurofins Viracor Clinical Diagnostics Podcast, where I'll be sharing up-to-date scientific advances, key diagnostic testing, and our most recent innovations. Enjoy part 6 of our 10-part series, originally broadcast live from ATC24 in Philadelphia.
Good afternoon, it's Kevin again with Eurofins Transplant Viracor Reviews here at ATC24, American Transplant Congress. Got the pleasure of sitting down with a few minutes with Joseph Hillenburg. You've been hearing us talk to a lot of those on the medical side of the transplants business, but you are the father of a son who's had a heart transplant. Is that correct?
Yep, he's 12 years old, 12 years post, so he was a little tight when he got his heart.
Fantastic. And really, I mean, one of the things that we've been talking about, we really want to get out there is expressing the importance of the physical and psychological aspect of transplantation, of going from, oh my gosh, I need a transplant, or in your case, oh my gosh, my son needs a transplant, to through the whole transplant phase, and getting the word out there, making people more educated on the aspects of organ donation and transplantation, that it doesn't always have to come from a deceased donor. There's that opportunity of living donors. And I like how you describe yourself as a transplant dad, a AV geek, IT professional, strategic advisor, transplant FAMs, and pediatric transplantation.
Yeah, so AV geek is actually aviation geek. So
aviation, not audio video?
No, well, I that too, but no.
I was thinking maybe I could step away and you can just run the show and let us know when you're done.
No, so and then Transplant Families is my organization. I hope you don't mind the small plug there.
No.
So I work with a number of recipient parents. We actually have like 10 of us here at ATC, which is unusual, and we're all just trying to educate ourselves and network with professionals such as yourselves, and with especially the providers who help save our kids. So. Perfect.
And I'm a fan of shameless plugs. So if you've got a website, a hashtag, or anything you want to share?
Sure, yeah. Transplantfamilies.org. We're Transplant Fams on Twitter and Transplant Families on Facebook and Instagram, all those other services. And we basically we started off as a support organization, and we migrated to doing education outreach. We actually have done policy, so proposing new OPTN regulations, and we actually also are doing research now. We have a few open grants that we're participating in or have proposed, basically just all centered around trying to improve the lives of our children.
Okay, so great stuff. Let's just jump into the history of how you got involved and what you've experienced. 12 years now, you say?
Yeah.
That's very good news, and he's doing excellent.
Yeah, he's across the street. He's actually going to come into the one of the sessions here just to kind of ghost it for a second or two. But
right.
Yeah, so
perfect. So
yeah,
go ahead and tell us your story.
Yeah, so he's our third. We have two daughters that are 3 or 4 years older, and they were seemingly presented normally, just looked like normal happy girls, and so that was what we thought was going to happen with him. He was born through basically a normal pregnancy. We went a month, and everything seemed normal, and then he went for just right the day before a pediatric exam, his 1 month. He presented with what looked like the flu and the stomach flu, and those of you who are who are listening who are cardiologists probably know what I'm talking about here. It basically wound up actually being ischemic failure, and so because he had dilated cardiomyopathy, it causes it caused fluid overload and all sorts of other complications. But it looked like to us parents as the stomach flu, so we took him in for to the pediatrician. They said, "You got to get him to the ER right now." We took him to the local ER. They panicked, did some exams, panicked, and then decided, well, this is too much for us. We're going to fly him down to Lurie Children's Hospital in Chicago, which would have been an hour away by driving. So they got the helicopter, flew him down, and Lurie very quickly diagnosed his condition, and then within a couple of days he was listed for heart transplant. They kept him stable, lots of support through diagnostics, through respirators, all sorts of other assists, and kept him on going for 19 days, and he was deteriorating a little bit, but they kept him going well enough that he was healthy enough for transplant 19 days later. And my wife had recently, obviously she was postpartum, so she was not in a good place. And this was, as a dad, us dads are not expected to be the primary caregiver, and so I was primary caregiver for my daughters all of a sudden, and just it was definitely changing our family dynamic and trying to also make sure we took time for ourselves. And he recovered very well from the transplant. He was we were out of the hospital in just about a month. We had to do a boot camp where we did all sorts of home testing and that sort of thing ourselves as parents to make sure we could do blood pressure checks and all the normal things that the doctor might want to know, so we don't have to go an hour into town. With that said, our life since then has been regular exams. A lot more at first, but since then, occasionally every 3 or 4 months, going in for an echocardiogram and other sorts of procedures, and then he sees other specialists. So transplant is our life, but he actually didn't really know it was his life. He just thought he was a normal kid up until he got, just this past winter, he got PJP, which is a form of pneumonia that a lot of transplant recipients get. And so this is, as a 12-year-old, this is his first real exposure to that life, because other than getting tests, he didn't really think of himself any differently. So now all of a sudden he's got the psychological shock of, I'm 12 years old, I got a breathing tube down my mouth, I can't even talk to my dad. And unfortunately, my wife had pneumonia, an unrelated pneumonia at the same time. And so I was there living in the hospital with him a month. Fortunately, I'm in IT. I'm able to do my day job.
Right.
And so that's a privilege. So I would just want to stress that most transplant parents don't get the luxuries that I do. I'm not well off, I'm just middle class, but there's a lot of parents out there who I met them in the ward. They really just not have the same levels of support from family, friends, the community that I did, and from our own livelihood. So just think about that when next time you meet a recipient family.
Right. And one thing you kind of briefly touched upon, and I don't think I've touched upon it with other people I've talked to here at ATC24, but it's not just the transplant surgeon or the folks in the surgical suite during the procedure. There is a whole cadre of individuals, specialists, and like this that help get through the whole transplantation process.
Absolutely, and that if you go back to that first day, just that first day where he was diagnosed, it probably took 200 people to get him stabilized. If you think about all the little cogs in the machine within that short span of time frame, and then during his day-to-day care, outside of the hospital, there's still a number of specialists. I'm communicating with through my chart, through EMRs, and sending messages about, what's his latest test result? You might have to change his dose because he's growing. So kids change their dosage a lot. All these other things are still a huge machinery behind the scenes making transplantation happen, and that includes the lab techs that I never meet, although I meet them here sometimes at events like ATC. I just ran into a histocompatibility person in the hall who, definitely we are grateful to everybody who helps make our child's lives happen, including the donor families, especially the donor families, because of survival guilt. Mm-hmm. So, it's just the amount of effort is immense, and the amount of, for better or for worse, money that, I looked at the bill, it was $1.5 million to get him just to 1 month. So, yeah, that's, some people, a lot of people don't know about that, that side of the transplant process and the whole procedures, getting through it and like this. So how has your life changed from 12 years ago to today? Well, I would say that I care more about my fellow human. I know that sounds cold, but I really didn't have any reason to, I wasn't selfish, but I didn't donate blood. I wasn't actually a registered organ donor. My politics changed a little bit, and I won't get into that in this venue, but I'm just saying, I know that's a third rail, as we say in Chicago, which is where I'm from. But
avoid the third rail.
Yes, avoid the third rail. But it does change the way you think about everything you go through life doing. And my day job is in IT, so it even changed the way I perceive that. My definition of what is important, what's mission critical, is definitely different now. And I'm not going to go into it there either. I'm in a safety-related industry, and so my perception of danger is now much different.
Okay, good. So we've talked a little adjunctly about your son. Mm-hmm. You want to give him a shout out?
Yeah, his name's Ben. He's an active, healthy 12-year-old. Especially after this last bout of PJP, he's now back to his baseline, which is good. He's a Boy Scout, not a Cub Scout. He's moved up to Boy Scout, so he does camping every month. He does Taekwondo. I now have to give in to my promise to him to buy him a sushi dinner because he got straight A+ this semester. And he also wanted some games for his little gamepad thing. So I now have to ante up from that bet. Yep. And not really a bet. As a parent, it's not really a bet, but you get the idea.
Right. I mean, it's something you want them to do, so you dangle that little lure out in front of them, and hopefully they'll take it and achieve what you know they can do, but they may not think they can do it until they try.
Yeah. So Ben is it's tough on him now because he is starting to recognize, as I mentioned, those differences. So we have to kind of stay ahead of that. So I'm making sure that he has the support services that he needs, even if he's not quite aware of it yet.
Right. Yeah, the support services are paramount with organ transplantation and organ recovery. Yeah. And such like that. Well, you kind of answered my next question is, what's he doing now that he's a 12-year-old and he's realizing that, oh my gosh, there's so much stuff out there. Taekwondo, very good. Boy Scouts, which would soon to become Scouting America.
Yeah, they're changing their name. It's I don't want to get into that here either because for some people that's a loaded question. But and his troop is not co-ed, so he's got a big troop he goes with to. They'll go, sometimes they'll go to a park about a mile away. Sometimes they'll go to a park 4 hours away. They've done cave camping this year. That's kind of nice. So camping in a cave in southern Wisconsin, and which actually made me a little trepidatious because there's bats in there, and we were like, don't touch the bats.
Right.
Yeah. So, right. But he has a lot of fun with that because it really helps him with his peer mentoring and leadership skills, which I think when you got a kid who's been through adverse circumstances, it's important to keep that confidence up.
Yeah. I guess a little personal note here. I was a Cub Master for 8 years.
Okay.
And I'm very proud to say, out of all the boys,
he's second class.
So all the boys that came through my program, 17 of them went on to become Eagles.
Oh, okay. And he's thinking about his Eagle project now. He a lot of his peers in his scouts in his scout troop, they want to do things like build planters for the churches or things like that. And he thinks he wants to do something big. And I'm trying to subtly steer him towards maybe you want to do something related to transplantation. I'm not going to make him do it, but he definitely isn't content with doing something small like a small community project, which I think is kind of nice. Well, and we got time to work it out.
You got time to work it out, but also by doing something big, that would allow him to get some of his other Scout brothers involved, Scout brothers and Scout sisters involved. I've got to make sure I correct myself with that, and give them the opportunity to really think about the community aspect of being a human.
Right, absolutely.
As you said. So that is phenomenal. We're getting short on our time here, but I'm going to open up the floor and let you talk about anything you want to talk about for the next couple of minutes.
So I want to stress one of the things I'd like to do is just kind of point out, and I'm glad that one of your other speakers was Aline Grogrosian, who is a colleague of mine in advocacy, not a professional colleague, but advocacy. And I just want to stress that patient advocacy is key in everybody who's listening to this getting what they need to out of transplantation, because the patient voice is what ultimately is going to drive demand for services. It's going to drive policy and change, all these other things that we as patients need to do. So, one of my goals is to try and elevate my fellow peers. So when I started doing volunteer work with some of the organizations I do, I only knew a couple parents that were involved. We've got 15 people here who are patient reps at this today.
That's phenomenal. And the other aspect of it too, very important. People think about organ transplant. They think about aunts, uncles, grandparents, or like that. Typically the older population. But there is a significant need for pediatric organ transplants as well.
Oh yeah, and especially if you think about how long children live. I mean, I fingers crossed, whatever figuratively you want to say, but I want my child to outlive me, as does every parent. But especially when you have a child with critical needs, you do what you can to help them. And even after he's an adult, I'm going to still, I think, want to be in pediatrics because it's so fulfilling. Pediatric practitioners, I just want to shout out to them. They are absolutely some of the most caring people in medicine. I'm sure that there's people that might, in other parts of medicine, that might disagree with that, but just the level of satisfaction you can see on their faces when they've accomplished something, when they've transplanted a child, it's just phenomenal. And I know that that their perception of care is different.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for taking a few minutes with us, Joseph.
Certainly. Thank you very much, Kevin, for inviting me.
Please keep up doing the great work that I know you're doing and the other organizations are doing in advocacy and spreading the word and breaking down the wall that's in front of all the myths about organ donation.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Appreciate your time, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Make sure to subscribe to this podcast and follow us on social media to stay up to date on all the latest information. If you want to help spread the word, please give us a 5-star review and tell your friends and colleagues to subscribe too. With over 40 years of diagnostic innovation and specialized expertise in infectious disease, pre- and post-transplant, allergy and immunology testing for immunocompromised and critical patients, Eurofins ViraCore is committed to helping medical professionals, transplant teams, and reference labs get results faster when it matters most. ViraCore is passionate about delivering value to our clients by providing timely, actionable information, never losing sight of the connection between the testing we perform and the patients you serve.